Welcome to SportsCenter. Hannah Storm and Jay Harris. The news coming fast and furious at this point, and we are commercial free for the next 25 minutes, counting down to the national championship game between TCU and Georgia from SoFi Stadium in LA. Kickoff is set for 7:30 Eastern tonight. We're going to check in on both those teams shortly, and so much else going on.
Yeah, Hannah, we're following NFL coaching news for teams that did not make the playoffs with Cliff Kingsbury, the latest to be fired. That's what our Adam Schefter is reporting. More on that in a moment. And Stephen A's strong reaction to the Texans' decision to fire Lovie Smith after just one season.
Yeah, a lot of reaction about that one. And what about the future of Aaron Rodgers? Reaction to what the Packers quarterback said following that loss to the Lions at Lambeau last night that kept Green Bay from reaching the playoffs. What about the Dallas Cowboys? They're in the playoffs, but after that awful performance yesterday, could Dak and Dallas have caused some concern against Brady and the Bucs? Could they be one and done? And we'll have an update on Kevin Durant's right knee following an injury to the Nets star. He suffered that, and the victory against the Heat last night. Details on that ahead.
Hannah, our breaking news in the Sports Center. That's how we begin the show. Adam Schefter reporting the Cardinals firing Coach Cliff Kingsbury after a 4-13 season. Kingsbury had signed an extension in March that tied him to the organization through the 2027 season. That came after Arizona went 11-6 last season and made the playoffs. And our Adam Schefter joining us now. What more can you tell us about this move by the Cardinals?
Well, Jay, I think the owner there, Michael Bidwell, wants to make some major changes here. When you look at all that this organization went through this year, they relieved 2 of their assistant coaches of their duties for off-the-field issues. We had their general manager take a leave of absence to tend to a health-related issue. You had problems on the field with DeAndre Hopkins being suspended for 6 games, Kyler Murray and Zach Ertz tearing their ACLs, this team finishing the season 4-13, second worst in the NFC. None of this went the way that they planned. None of it went the way Michael Bidwell planned when he hit Kingsbury the contract last offseason 10 months ago. But Cliff Kingsbury's going to walk away here with roughly $30+ million. And so I'm sure he's going to find no problems finding another job, finding work elsewhere, and the Cardinals will look to make a new start, as I think this whole organization is going to undergo a makeover now with them firing Cliff Kingsbury this morning.
Where do you think the next move might come?
Well, there's a wide array of candidates out there available. And what's interesting is that Michael Bidwell, the owner, usually has his right-hand man, Steve Keim, right there to assist him. But most people have questions about Steve Keim's future with the organization. Obviously, he's on leave right now, and so Michael Bidwell doesn't have the trusted advisor or advisors that he normally turns to. Adrian Wilson, Quentin Harris have been helping him as the interim general managers, but he's going to have to figure out how to get this organization back to its winning ways. It's a big task.
Adam, you hang tight. Let's go over to Hannah with Lewis.
Well, so here's the outlook first before we get to Louis Riddick. They have the 3rd pick also in the 2023 NFL Draft after they finish an NFC worst 4-13. Adam referenced it moments ago. Kyler Murray. Remember, he signed that huge contract this past offseason. That was a questionable decision, too. He's locked in now through 2028. What about DeAndre Hopkins when he gets healthy? Well, Arizona has him through 2025. Also, that defense. Sorry. 2nd most points per game. Obviously, J.J. Watt is now done. He had 2 sacks in his final game. So Louis Riddick is with us, and the fates of these 2 guys have been really tied at the hip. They came in together, Kingsbury and Murray. The team commits to Murray. We saw Kingsbury even say in games where Murray missed that he was able to run his offense better with a backup quarterback. I mean, it was not working. It wasn't going to work. Where should they go from here, in your estimation?
Well, considering the fact that they made this commitment to Kyle Mariana, and quite honestly, I don't know where they go without him. They better really start structuring everything so as to try and extract maximum value out of him, because that's where it starts. Look at any of the teams that right now that are at the top of the NFL. That dynamic between head coach and quarterback is rock solid. Just think about it. Think about how it is in Buffalo with Josh Allen. Think about how it is in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, think about how it is with Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow. All these guys, they are in lockstep with their head coach and general manager, as a matter of fact. And everything from there flowed very fluidly and very consistently. It's nothing like that in Arizona. Nothing at all. Look, Cliff Kingsbury is one of those guys who, when you look him in the face and you kind of listen to him then talk about his quarterback and just talk about how he exerts his influence on this football team, it doesn't really make you feel confident in the direction of this franchise. So I think that's what they're going to have to find. Who's that coach? Who's that general manager if Steve Keim isn't there that can really extract maximum value out of Kyler Murray? And if you don't think you can get it out of Kyler Murray, then you are really in a world of hurt.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
You could potentially
It's
be
Kyler
in here
Murray.
with them. Exactly.
Is he the answer?
Exactly.
Okay,
I mean,
because
that's going to be something that Michael Bidwell's going to have to figure out with the people who he does bring in to be his trusted advisors if Steve Keim's not going to be that guy.
I mean, they preemptively gave him so much money without a single playoff win. It is going to be fascinating to see what happens there in the desert. So much more to talk about. We're back with you in just a sec, Lewis. Thanks.
And over the weekend, the NFL playoff picture taking shape. Here are the top things that you need to know right now. Jalen Hurts returning, leading the Eagles to their first 14-win season and the number one seed in the NFC. In the AFC, the Chiefs took care of the Raiders, got the 1 seed in the first round bye. Seattle clinching the final spot in the NFC after its overtime win over the Rams and a Packers loss. The Dolphins getting the final spot in the AFC following a win over the Jets and a Patriots loss. And the Packers will miss the playoffs for the first time since 2018 after losing to the Lions. It was the first time they failed to clinch in a season finale in 4 chances with Aaron Rodgers. Here he is.
At some point, the carousel comes to a stop, and it's time to get off. And I think you kind of know when that is. And that's what needs to be contemplated. You know, is it time? Also, what's the organization doing? You know, it's part of it as well. But the competitive fire is always going to be there. I don't think that ever goes away. Sometimes it gets transferred, I think, to other things that might not ever fill that large void. But like I said, I feel good about what I've accomplished in this league and wouldn't have any regrets walking away. But I got to see what it feels like once I get away from this.
Louis Riddick back with us. Aaron Rodgers didn't sound very certain there. How does his tone, his decision affect the organization as a whole?
Well, it affects it tremendously, Jay. And look, quite honestly, listening to that kind of talk, those kind of words coming out of his mouth over and over and over again, it really does have a trickle-down effect on the overall tenor and tone and confidence of the rest of the organization. Like, I can just tell you this, from being out in Las Vegas this past weekend and talking to Davante Adams, although Davante did not leave Green Bay because of Aaron Rodgers, there's no question that a guy like of his caliber wanted certainty at the quarterback position. And he thought he had it in Las Vegas. Now that Derek Carr is probably going to move on, he's faced with another situation where it's going to change again. But I can tell you, that has a definite dramatic impact on not only the players, but on the scouts, on the coaches, on the support staff, everyone. When you're a Hall of Fame All-Pro quarterback, 2-time MVP quarterback is sitting there saying, well, I got to get away and see how it feels. And I got to see how it feels once I'm away from you guys, whether or not I want to come back again. It puts everything else in a state of limbo. We know this uncertainty ruins many, many things. When you just don't know what the direction is going to be because maybe one certain facet is kind of holding you hostage. And I think for him and for Green Bay, for Coach LaFleur, for Brian Gutekunst, all these guys need to make sure that early in this offseason they get some certainty and get some direction from him so it's not the same situation as last year, because it also impacted their slow start this year and his inability to really be on the same page with these young receivers and why they had to play catch-up all season long.
You mentioned last year, certainty really hadn't been Aaron Rodgers' thing.
No.
Actually. The Packers still owe Rodgers more than $58.3 million if he plays next season. We will see.
Yeah.
Louis, you hang tight.
Yeah.
As for the teams that made the playoffs, the Eagles lock up that number 1 seed. But here is how the rest of the NFC looks in terms of matchups. We're going to start with a divisional rematch between the Seahawks and the Niners. San Francisco winning both previous games this season, 6-0 in the division. First time the Niners have done that since the late 90s. Giants-Vikings, second meeting this season. Minnesota beat New York 27-24 when they met in Week 16. They had to win on a 61-yard field goal as time expired. And the Cowboys and the Buccaneers in the postseason after their Week 1 matchup. Tom Brady 7-0 in his career against the Cowboys. His best record against any opponent, including the playoffs. As we are back with Lewis now, and the Cowboys looked terrible yesterday against the Washington Commanders. It was a 20-point loss. It was their worst loss of the season. They looked bad in every single phase of the game. I mean, Sam Howell is starting at quarterback, and the defense can't even stop the Commanders. Dak can't take care of the football. How do they not go one and done again this year? What needs to happen?
Yeah, that is a great question. Look, I think with the Cowboys, very rarely is the question physical in nature, meaning are they good enough? Do they have enough firepower? Do they have enough people who can make game-changing plays on the defensive side of the ball? Can they make the explosives on the offensive side in the run and pass game? That isn't ever the question really with this football team, although they're not perfect. The question with this team is exactly what you're alluding to. It is the protecting the football, making good decisions, the mental resilience, the mental stamina to not make dumb mistakes and then have to stand up there in post-game comments and just kind of really confirm what everyone is saying to you, which is you guys played like crap today. And then you have your franchise quarterback going, yeah, we did. They're like, well, Dak, you need to protect the ball better. Yeah, I do. Well, then do it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's really the question with this football team. And I know a lot of it then comes back to the head coach. Coaches don't coach turnovers. Coaches don't coach punters not being able to catch the snap deep in your own territory. Yeah. Coaches don't coach punt muffs when you're the punt return guy. They don't coach that way. So I know Mike McCarthy is going to catch a lot of heat for this, especially if they go one and done. But I wouldn't bet against it because I'm telling you, this team mentally is just not able to summon up their best performances when they need it the most.
So if it's not up to the coaches, then who's responsible?
Well, look, I think it's always a total group effort. I mean, I'm not saying that you can absolve Mike McCarthy of blame here.
There's a level of accountability that has to happen.
But really, see, this is the beauty of team building in the NFL. Because there's really not just that one thing that you can just flip the switch and go, now we've got it fixed. Everyone has to take accountability for it. And now what you're going to wind up having to do, what Jerry Jones is going to wind up having to do if they do go one and done, is reevaluate everything as far as why aren't we not getting the performance we need. And that's not where you want to be. It's just not. But right now, these players, starting with their best players, starting with the quarterback, has to protect the football. Otherwise, they're going to be very disappointed here very soon.
How about this? Dak Prescott has 15 interceptions this season. He ties Davis Mills of the Texans for the most in the NFL, even though Dak missed 5 games. Tied for the most interceptions in the NFL. That's a fact.
Yeah.
All right, we shall see. Plenty of fodder to talk about this week. Thank you, Lewis.
Hannah, Chiefs are the 1 seed. Here's how the rest of the AFC played out. The Dolphins sneaking into the postseason with a last-second field goal. They're going to have to take on the Bills. Those two split meetings in the regular season, with the Bills winning the latest meeting 32-29. The Ravens will have to take on the Bengals for the second straight week. This will be the 15th instance since 1990 of the same teams meeting in the final week of the season and in the wild card playoffs. And Justin Herbert's Chargers will face off against Trevor Lawrence's Jags again. It's going to be the third time since 1950 that two quarterbacks under 25 will make their playoff debuts against each other. Adam Schefter back with us. Adam, starting in Miami, what's the latest you're hearing on Tua?
Before we get to that, 1 second, I just want to let you know the Cardinals general manager, Steve Keim, also has stepped away. So that means there is going to be a new head coach and a new general manager in Arizona. All right, let's go into Tua. We've got a situation here where the Dolphins don't know who their quarterback is going to be on Sunday in Buffalo against the Bills in the wild card game. I think they're hoping that Tua will be able to make it back somehow from the concussions that he suffered this year. They're taking this day by day. They're not rushing it. He's been meeting with doctors. I think he feels pretty comfortable right now, but they want to see how he's doing this week. It's all dependent upon medical clearance. Teddy Bridgewater's got the dislocated pinky. Tua's missed the last 2 games. I have a hard time imagining that the Dolphins want to head to Buffalo with their rookie quarterback Skylar Thompson making the start in a playoff game. We'll see whether Tua or Teddy is able to make it back this week for Miami.
Tua hadn't played since Christmas Day against the Packers. Okay, another quarterback in the AFC, Lamar Jackson, hadn't played since December the 4th. What's his status for the wild card game against the Bengals?
Well, he still has swelling in his knee, and that's been the issue that's prevented him from coming back right now because he's dealing with a sprained PCL. There is swelling there right now, and let's keep this in mind too, Jay. He still has not practiced since he suffered this injury 5 games ago. No games in over a month, no practice in over a month. And like Miami has quarterback issues, so does Baltimore because Tyler Huntley, Lamar Jackson's backup, didn't start yesterday due to a shoulder injury against Cincinnati. So they don't know whether they're going to have Lamar back or Tyler Huntley. Now, one person told me last week there's a strong chance that Lamar will be back. Another person said, hold on, let's see. And then another person said, we think he'll be back, but I don't know that anybody really knows because he still hasn't practiced and they have to see him on the practice field until we get to Wednesday. If he's not out on the practice field Wednesday, that would tell you it's shaping up as another week of no Lamar. If he's out there at some point in time, limited, that would tell you that he's got a chance to play Sunday night, and we'll see how he fares this week.
We'll watch that, Adam. Thank you. Let's go back over to Hannah Lewis.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine 2 teams who are more this way. extremely dangerous with their starting quarterbacks and extremely in trouble without them. Which of these two teams is better suited to compete, to be competitive as a huge underdog without their starter? And we could be talking, as Adam said, with a third string quarterback on both teams.
Yeah, I think this is a tough one, but I think it's Baltimore, Hannah, because they can become very much so. Well, they already are run-centric anyway. This is a run-centric dominated football team, a tight end dominated football team, a middle of the field dominated football team that runs a very unconventional offense that I think is not so dependent upon the quarterback being someone who's going to really put it on himself to throw the football around in a drop-back passing type of game. They can shorten the game. They play probably better defense than Miami. They're playing very good defense at this point in time. So they can muddy up the game enough to where if the quarterback of Lamar Jackson's caliber isn't playing, they can still shorten the game, maybe get a turnover here and there, play the field position game, play the turnover game, and maybe squeak out a win against right now what I consider to be maybe one of the top two most dangerous teams in the NFL in the Cincinnati Bengals. So it's an uphill climb for whether Lamar's there or not. Miami's interesting because, you know what, with Tua, I think they can beat any team.
They were pretty good in Buffalo.
They can beat any team in the NFL. And they certainly
right.
can beat Buffalo because Buffalo right now is not without their flaws, especially defensively in the secondary.
Right.
If Tua's there, it changes the complexion of the team. Without him, though, you see how limited they become. Because quite honestly, Mike McDaniel doesn't always want to commit to the running game, even though he should. Because he sees
with or without Tua.
Exactly.
Right?
He sees Jalen Waddle out there. He sees Tyreek out there, and he goes,
Which is
"Man,
so weird. It's so weird because you've been
tempted."
saying all season, like, they need to run the ball more consistently. It's just crazy.
When Mostert gets going,
Yes.
it's beautiful.
Yes.
But he just won't stick with it.
Yeah,
So
I mean, look what he did in Buffalo.
Yeah, exactly.
Right when they were
So
up there last.
This will be interesting. This will be interesting. But I think Baltimore can hang. Although I still think they're going to lose to Cincinnati anyway, because I think Cincinnati's going to wind up being in the AFC Championship game.
Right.
Miami, we'll see.
Well, they are 6.5-point underdogs right now. The Ravens at Miami's 10.5 point underdogs. Like Adam said, we'll know a lot more in a couple days. Lewis, thank you.
Guys, Herm Edwards said it best. You play to win the game. Hello. That's what Lovie Smith said he and the Texans would do yesterday, even if winning would cost Houston the #1 overall pick in April's draft. They beat the Colts 32-31. Lovie Smith was fired after the game, after 1 year on the job. The Texans finishing the season 3-13-1. Here's what First Take had to say about Houston firing Lovie Smith.
The Houston Texans organization, I'm going to say something loud and clear over the national airwaves, and I don't give a damn what anybody thinks. African Americans need not apply. The Houston Texans hired Lovie Smith because they were under immense pressure to go in a different direction, because they wanted to hire former 12-year veteran Josh McCown. Ladies and gentlemen, the only coaching experience he had was a volunteer assistant at a high school. And that's who they wanted to bring in as the head coach of the Houston Texans before the national media and local raised holy hell. And as a fallback, you went to the black dude who you clearly had no intentions of keeping. You just wanted them to band-aid the issue for the moment to buy you some time before you did what you wanted to do. The Houston Texans organization are an atrocity. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're an African American and you aspire to be a head coach in the National Football League, there's 31 teams you should hope for. You should hope beyond God that the Houston Texans never call you. Not as long as that man is in there. Because it's an embarrassment and something needs to be said about it.
We get the worst jobs, and we don't get the opportunity to even fix the worst jobs because you get fired just like this. I don't know any great white coach that would take the job unless you give them some guarantees. You want to guarantee me 4 years to turn this place around. You see, but the African-American coaches can't come in with that power because Lovie wouldn't have gotten another job.
Right.
This was his last chance to try to get back in the NFL.
Yeah.
So you have to take what's on the table
That's right.
to try to change
And
it.
they knew it.
And all of this, I'm firing a man because he won a football game. I don't want a coach that's not going to argue back if I say lose a game. Those players don't want it. They're not going in the game trying to think about, let's try to go get that first pick. We talk about this on TV. That stuff don't come in the locker room. I've been in the locker room. I've been on 1-15 teams, 3-13 teams. I've never heard anybody say, let's go lose so we can get a first pick. I've never heard one player ever say that to me in my life. And if he did, I'll bust him in his mouth. right there in the locker room. Some mess in Houston, and they bring these guys in and they use them as scapegoats. That's the issue. That's the problem. And this is what African American coaches have been yelling about for a while, and it's blatant right in our face.
Yeah, amen to that. Just the latest terrible decision by that organization. Obviously, Houston needed to lose to secure that #1 pick. It now goes to Chicago. Bears had a 2% chance at the top pick in Week 7. They lost the last 10 games of the season. Now here's the question, Jay. Do they commit to Justin Fields? They have the opportunity to take a quarterback potentially at that top spot. Maybe trade that pick to a team that needs a quarterback. It's going to
Not be a question.
It's going to be very interesting, though, to see what they do with that #1 pick. The Cardinals, the Colts, the Hawks round out the top 5. Eagles, get this. They have the number 10 pick, even though they are the top seed due to a trade with New Orleans.
Hannah, let's go to the NBA. Kevin Durant. He has an MCL sprain, going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks. That's what the team is saying. He injured his knee in Brooklyn's win over Miami yesterday, right there, missing 6 weeks with an MCL sprain last season. Our Adrian Wojnarowski reports the team is optimistic that this sprain is less severe. Here's Kyrie Irving after the game last night talking about his teammate.
He's in good spirits, as we all are. The strength of our team is us picking each other up and just being ready for whatever's thrown at us. Pretty clear that me and Kay are leading predominantly most of the offense, and we have incredible shooters, incredible talented basketball players around us. I think one of the greatest qualities of our team is our bench and the way we support each other despite who's in the lineup. And now it's just time to go out and exemplify that until we figure out the timeline of Kay and when he could be available against.
All right, to say the Nets struggle without KD in the lineup would be an understatement. Over the last 2 seasons, Brooklyn has a win percentage more than 300 points higher when Durant plays. Durant has played all but 1 game this season after missing a total of 27 last year.
Capital One Bowl Mania Preview is brought to you by Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Tonight's college football title game sees Georgia as a 12.5-point favorite, looking to repeat as national champion, something that hasn't been done since Bama did it in 2011 and 12. TCU, the upstart, looking to win their first national title since the late 30s. For more on this game, let's head out to SoFi.
Sports Center on the road, presented by Rocket Mortgage. There is no sun in sunny Southern California this morning. It is wet, it is windy, it is rainy. Never mind that. SoFi Stadium inside, protected, where there will be a battle for the college football national championship game between TCU and Georgia. Can Max Duggan of the Frogs continue that improbable run to a national championship, or can Stetson Bennett, the Georgia Bulldogs, be the first team in the college football playoff era to win back-to-back national championships? With that, welcome in Sam Acho, Greg McElroy, Matt Berry. Gentlemen, we've made it. We've done a ton of TV, we've done a ton of football, but yet there will be a kickoff behind us tonight. And Ach, I want to start from the TCU perspective. What is the key for the Frogs to get this thing done tonight?
The key is Quentin Johnston, 6'4", 215. We've talked about all the other receivers, but he is the key. He has over 30 yards per catch over the last 2 weeks, 6 for 63, 163 last week. And all season long, he's been the big play threat for this team. If Quentin Johnston is shut down, TCU will not have a chance to win this game.
So he is the big play threat for the receiver. You're going to need that against the stingy Georgia defense. What about for you?
I think it's really all about the offensive line for the TCU Horned Frogs. Are they going to be able to hold up in the trenches? We've all talked at length about how good this pass rush is for Georgia. Yes, they're without a piece or two, and maybe they're not as good as they were a year ago,
Sure.
but that doesn't matter. They're still beyond elite in so many different spots along the front. So we're going to find out quickly if they can protect their quarterback and just try to create some balance offensively by running the football.
Remarkable. 5 guys from Georgia, first round of the draft last year on defense. Guess what? They're all back. Speaking of the Dogs, that's the key for TCU. Give me the key for the Dogs to get this thing done.
They need to get back to their normal defensive ways. Over the last 2 years, this defense has been dominant, but 2 of their worst 3 performances yardage-wise has come in the last 2 weeks. What we saw last year's Georgia, same co-defense coordinator in Muschamp. What we